Well, good morning, everybody. Happy holidays and all that stuff if you are into that. Good to see you all here in this late December time of year. I feel like this is awfully high. I'm going to mess around with this a little bit. Oh, there we go. Hopefully nothing falls over. Well, here we go. I guess we've got one more before the year is out. And yeah, I kind of picked an interesting topic this week, I think. Hopefully, we're going to talk a little bit about empathy. Ooh, and I have it in quotation marks. I hope you noticed that. So, again, that means we're going to have some critical thinking skills going on this week. So, what are we doing? As usual, for the newbies, this is You Be the Behavior Consultant, the live stream I try to do almost every Monday. Since it's a holiday week, I'm here at home, so we get to do this. And how does it work? I present a topic for discussion. It is discussion oriented, so you guys get to interact. I have some questions to prompt discussion, and then we explore this topic a little bit more. I do have a few video clips, and then we'll recap it all and go over some key points at the end. And what are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about empathy. So, boy, so what is empathy? There's a loaded question. And I'm hoping some of you who are my regulars here may feel inclined to try to give us a definition for that. And as usual, I went to the journal articles to pull up some information and to get this conversation going. And maybe an easy way to get started on this is to talk about maybe some examples of behaviors that maybe you might describe as, quote, empathetic, and or maybe some things you may have heard people have studied to describe empathy, because there are definitely research projects out there that look at, quote, empathy. Again, I keep putting these in quotation marks. And so that might be a good place to start. And Adrian's here. Good morning from, it's winter today in central Arkansas with 20 degrees and frost. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're a little bit colder here in Texas, but no, none of that, real winter weather yet. Thank goodness. Cause we can't handle it here in Texas. We're not prepared for that. I grew up in snow, but I don't really gravitate towards that anymore, I have to admit. And then of course, to add to our conversation here, I have some things about what might be reasons animals do or do not engage in such behaviors, and that we kind of will get into a little bit later, maybe after we've described some behaviors that we might think fall into the categories of, quote, empathy. So I don't know, is anybody feeling brave, feeling like they want to dive into this topic a little bit? Sort of seems appropriate for the time of the year, for the season. I don't know. What do you guys think? What are and I don't know if anyone's even looked at some of these studies. It was an interesting journey to start pulling up journal articles and seeing what researchers chose to study when they wanted to look at empathy. And there's lots of viral videos out there. These are the ones that definitely pull at your heartstrings when you look at the viral videos. This is also a fun one for bird people, our companion parrot people. There's some interesting things that were done with some birds. And again, some people might not have looked at some of the studies that were done. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Anyone has some thoughts on empathy? Oh, here we go. Empathy would be feeling the same emotions, question mark, as another individual. Sadness is one of the most people associate with empathy. Yeah. So I like that definition. So empathy would be feeling the same emotions as another individual. Sadness is the one most people associate with empathy. Yeah. So, and it's an interesting statement, isn't it? It kind of opens up a lot of questions. And I like that you added that question mark there, Adrian, right? So which makes me think it probably opens up some questions for you, right? So maybe it has you thinking about some things. And I think that's one of the thing, and that's why I kind of thought this would be an interesting topic for us to discuss, because it kind of does lead to some questions, doesn't it? And so maybe you had some questions there. Maybe that's why you had the question mark there. And if so, maybe you can add your thoughts there, Adrian, as to why you had your question mark in there. Yeah, so that is one of those. And I'm trying to. I don't remember what I wrote down for my definition here. How much I added in there. I'll wait a little bit and let some more people, if they're inclined, to add some commentary there. I know it takes a while for people to type things in there, and there's a delay from when I'm talking until it actually gets to you guys. And Adrian says, difficult with animals because we can't know, in quotations, what animals are thinking and feeling except by observing behavior, and we may not get that right. Exactly. Yeah. So that is exactly the problem, isn't it? We can't know what anybody's thinking or feeling, really. I guess we could ask a human what they are thinking or feeling, and hope that they're telling us what that is. And Chris says, and we can get confused between empathy and compassion. Oh, you might have to elaborate on that one for me. Yeah, so what's the difference between empathy and compassion? Oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Oh, that's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, I think that the tough one is because thinking and feeling are covert behaviors, right? They're not overt. The only way that we sort of maybe guess at what an animal is thinking or feeling is by observing that overt behavior. And then we're sort of kind of making an assumption as to what the animal is thinking or feeling. And is it thinking or feeling the same thing we're thinking or feeling? Right. And so that's where we come back to that empathy then. Right. Yeah. So that's the challenge with this empathy thing. Right. Yeah. So other comments on that stuff? Because those are some good points there. I could get into my definition here a little bit. Let's see. Woo, I did write a lot of words. I wondered if I wrote a lot of words. I couldn't remember. But yeah, this ties into what Adrian said. So what I had is it's been defined as the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. And this is what I pulled from some of the studies that were done. It's also been described as an emotional reaction when observing the experiences of another. For example, animals may emit specific responses when observing other animals emitting behavior operationalized as pain or distress. However, here's what's really interesting. And I'm going to read Chris's response on compassion. Compassion is more like concern for the individual. Empathy is feeling based on our prior experience. I'm not a philosopher. Yeah, thanks for putting some clarification, though, because I think that's an important point. So I think one of the interesting things about some of these empathy studies was that and again, this is where it gets fuzzy, and I think this ties into what some of the things Adrian was saying, is that we don't always see, quote, empathetic responses under all conditions. And this goes back to what I know you guys know, because I know you all so well, is that it turns out, right, that empathy is a construct, right? And so we'll have to get into what a construct is a little bit here in just a moment. So how do we measure empathy then if it's a construct? Ugh. So in the human learner world, some of the things that have been attempted to be used to measure empathy has been self-questionnaires. So they could ask a whole bunch of questions about, what somebody's feeling under these conditions. But some of the studies have shown that those were kind of flawed in their ability to measure empathy. So what does it mean to an animal trainer? So it means we have to be kind of careful, right? As you guys have already sort of delicately said here in some of your statements, that we have to be careful using a construct like the word empathy. So we have to look at a behavioral response, right? So we're going to have to go back to what you guys know very well, which is operationalizing those responses that we're going to say, this is what empathy looks like. So you may observe a behavioral response from one animal when it observes another animal in distress, right? Or when it's playing or whatever it may be doing. So you see an animal sees another animal doing something and it responds a certain way. But like you already pointed out, however, we're still making assumptions about that covert behavior, those emotions, based on our overt responses, body language, topographical responses, based on the context under which those overt responses occur. So that context includes whatever behaviors the other animals are doing and those antecedent conditions for those responses, and including emotional behavior the target animal exhibits. So we may think about, like, what is that other animal doing, including like if it's looking really, really stressed out, which probably includes like some emotional responses that we can't see, but that other animal is, doing behavior, observable behavior that may include an emotional response that we can't see, and that's affecting the response of our target animal, the animal that we're watching. And we're saying, how does that animal respond? Does it go, I don't care? Or does it go, oh my gosh, that guy's stressed out, I'm going to respond now too? And how does it respond? Does it go, oh, I'm kind of worried about that guy? Or, what does he do? Well, and we can't even say he's worried. What does he do? And so we kind of get back to our operationalizing behavior, right? So Adrian says, I do know, at least for parrots and probably dogs, they are very observant of our body language, tone of voice, and eye contact. Yeah, so we do see that, right? We do see other animals be observant to the other body language of other animals, but does it tell us anything about their emotional response? That's the question, right? That's, I guess, what empathy is asking us. Does what that animal observes when another animal is doing something tell us, and then if we go back and look at that first animal, what does that tell us about the emotional response to that first animal? I think that's what empathy is really asking us to look at, right? Does that make sense? So let's go back to construct really quick for those folks. So hypothetical construct, this is a fancy definition, and we could go way down the pathway, but I'm just going to throw it out there for people who haven't heard it before. So a conjectured entity, process, or event that is not observed directly, but is assumed to explain an observable phenomenon. It is not merely a summary of the relationships between observable variables, but contains surplus meaning over and above such relationships. So that's a pretty fancy definition. And for those of you that are members of animaltrainingfundamentals.com, I found a really nice paper. It's really long, but it kind of goes into the whole history of hypothetical construct, the terminology, where it comes from. It actually goes, like, the first usage of it was back in the 1940s. So it's pretty interesting. And so I just wanted to throw it out there for now, just so we have it defined and it's in there. But let's kind of get back into empathy. But what are some behaviors that you think you might have heard about or seen, or maybe read about or saw viral videos that animals may have emitted that people have described or operationalized as maybe empathetic or showing empathy? Because we've kind of already identified now that empathy is a construct, right? So what we would have to do is say, well, how could we operationalize that? What would be behaviors that we think might be emitted? This is the stuff that the researchers would study, I guess. So we'd go back to what are conditions in which an animal we might say might emit. Let's see. And I don't want to throw up my slide here yet, because I want to give you guys a chance to think of some behaviors that you might have seen. And I'm kind of giving away one here on my slide. Any videos that you might have seen? Any viral videos or things that you've read about? Where people might infer, well, the animal is responding to emotional state of the other organism in front of it. Birds that will come over and cuddle, snuggle quietly when the owner is sad, down, putting their head down, closed, etc., different from comfortable snuggles. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that one, because one of the things I searched for was, have you ever heard that expression, like, my dog knows when I'm sick, or my animal knows when I'm not feeling well and it comes over and it spends time with me, or snuggles with me, because that was one of the things that came to my head as like an example of it. There's definitely videos of like dogs coming in. There was one of a dog coming into a hospital or something. It found its owner in the hospital. So what do you guys think about that? What how might we think about that in other terms, maybe other than the blanket statement of empathy? Is there another way that we might talk about that? I mean, I think empathy, again, could you operationalize that? Well, I mean, I guess you kind of have operationalized that a little bit as far as what it looks like. But I think it's really interesting when we start thinking about these behaviors a little bit more. Why might an animal do that? I started thinking especially about the dog that went into the hospital and found its owner. That one I thought was an interesting one. And I wonder, problem is we don't know if they're sad because we are. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point, Adrian. We don't know that, do we? I mean, they could be. They absolutely could be. I'm not saying that they're not. We just don't know. So we start asking the question, why did the dog come over and lay down with you? Why did the parrot come snuggle with you? Why did the dog go to the hospital? It's really interesting. Let me see what videos I have here. So I'll give away one here that they studied. So you can see I've got all these animals yawning here. And so let's look at, and you guys who are parrot people, and I know Chris has budgies, so you may have noticed this. I remember seeing this with my budgies as a kid growing up. How many people remember contagion yawning with budgies? Yeah, and Rocky Roach says, my cat will lay on me whether I'm sick or not. Yes. But I remember eye blinking with budgies, where if you start blinking your eyes a lot, they seem to start blinking and closing their eyes more. And contagion yawning is one of the things that's studied a lot as an example of empathy. And they've also looked at it with dogs. And I'm going to show you a video clip that does have audio with dogs, and I'll let you think about it a little bit. This one does have audio, so I'll let you listen to the audio.
And little Charlie are on their way to the park. She yawns, and he yawns, because he's feeling what she's feeling.
You can tell if I'm in a sad mood, I'll get a little lick on the cheek or something like that.
When you yawn, your dog yawns. Swedish scientists, here they are at work, just proved that dogs actually empathize, and that's why they find human yawns contagious.
Not just yawned, but they also took on the emotion that yawning usually signifies, which is usually sleepiness and tiredness.
And it works, well, 69% of the time. Yawning is also contagious between humans and chimpanzees, baboons, and budgerigars, but not between us and tortoises. Yep, someone actually looked into that. Oh, and cats? Couldn't care less if you're tired. But will a dog yawn more for its owner? Our Swedish scientists say no. I say yes, because when I tried... And when Melissa, the owner, tried... There you go. Nick Watts, ABC News, and little Charlie.
So what do you guys think? Do you think contagion yawning is a sign of empathy? And Adrian says that people will do that too. Yep. But is it empathy? And do you agree with all the statements that were said about why? Who's yawning right now? I didn't. I actually did not. One of my budgies yawns when I talk. I take that very personally, as I must be boring to him. I do not yawn when he yawns, by the way. Yeah. Those are some interesting statements. Yeah. There's some interesting statements there. Things to think about there. The cat one yawn. Cats don't care if you die made me laugh. I'm gonna plug in my phone here. For some reason that one's dying. Yeah, so there were some things there that I'm gonna pull this up here. So some examples, or I'm gonna call them, or lack of examples of empathy in animals. So some things that have been studied: contagion yawning in dogs and primates and budgies, and other things that we have looked at is response to pain or distress of another animal. So they've looked at, like, what do cows do when another cow is getting an ear tag put in, or castration? How do they respond? Do they respond to the other animal's response to pain? And then you guys may have seen all the videos of elephant funerals, but how does a vulture respond to a dead vulture? Okay. I wonder if it's a physiological response and not empathy that makes yawning contagious. Yes. So some people think it's a fixed action pattern that once it's started, that you can't stop. And so that so there's that. But yes, there's some other things we can get to. As well. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that, that's what made it start. Crows. Yeah, what do crows do when they see a dead crow? Yes. So, but is the response the same every single time? So that's why I have examples of empathy or lack of empathy. I find this a difficult subject to define, since empathy is a construct and we don't know what the animal is feeling. Humans seem to be bent on having animals think, feel as we do. Yes, I think those are really good points, Chris. And I think as we keep diving in this a little bit deeper, we're going to start seeing some things I think are very interesting. So again, some of these things have been shown as examples of empathy or lack of empathy. So I'm going to show you another video clip. Let's look at, this is a news story, and this is about how to keep vultures away. You won't see any dead vultures or anything, but it'll explain how dead vultures are used to keep vultures away.
City is now shooing away some live, very bothersome birds by using a bunch of dead ones. Perry is the place. KCCI's Hannah Hilliard is there live tonight. And Hannah, what in the world is going on in Perry?
Okay, Steve, so I'm in the center of town, or near the center of town in Perry right now. You have lots of homes in the area. We're not far from the water tower, and you have big, beautiful trees. It's a very attractive place for families, but also apparently turkey vultures. The sky is clear and the trees are bare in this quiet residential part of Perry. But come spring...
Oh, it's like a big flock. I don't even know.
These guys take over. They are turkey vultures that make a pit stop in Perry beginning in March.
We've always just noticed them hanging out at the water tower. They're these big things. You can't really not notice them for sure.
You could have, 40 to 50 turkey vultures sitting in a tree in your backyard.
They smell, are in the way, and like any bird, they leave their mark.
There's just a lot of waste that they produce, and so it does become kind of a nuisance.
Perry Police Chief Eric Vaughn says they've used several methods to try to get these birds to scoop, but the only successful one they've discovered in recent years, hanging dead turkey vultures from these trees.
This is the only thing that has really shown any results to try and get rid of the turkey vultures.
Because the species is federally protected, Perry City Administrator Sven Peterson says they have to apply for a permit to hunt the birds. Once they have one, the fire department uses its ladder to place the lifeless turkey vulture high up. And it seems to work.
It's kind of that visual warning to other turkey vultures that something isn't right here.
Perry is not the only town stuck in this bird box. Crows flock to downtown Des Moines, forcing businesses to get creative. But nothing seems to keep birds from trying again every year.
It works while they're hung there, but I wish we had a long-term solution to find a better way to deter these.
Now, this permit only allows the city to hunt 5 of these birds, and they try and stick to that number even if they are able to acquire the turkey vultures by roadkill, or if sick or injured birds are reported to them. They have submitted their permit for this year. They're just waiting on the approval from the federal government, and they say they've never had any trouble in the past getting that approval. We're covering Dallas County tonight. Hannah Hilliard, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's News.
City is now shooing away.
So we've got vultures that if they see a dead vulture in its area, they seem to go away. And then we've got elephants. I don't have a video of an elephant funeral, although there is a very nice one on the National Geographic site where a researcher talks about the elephants examining the carcass of a elephant that they knew that it looks like it was the matriarch that had passed like a couple weeks ago. And so they spend some time at the carcass and they're exploring it and whatnot. And I think she does a really good job interpreting what she's observing. And so what she describes is she just describes what the elephant behavior looks like and how it differs from other behavior that she observes with elephants in the wild. It was African elephants. And what I really like about that video, the reason I can't share it is just because, the YouTube police will say, you can't use that video. So I didn't put it in there. But if you look up National Geographic and look up, I think, elephant funeral, you'll see that that she just says, I don't know what they're feeling, but, here's what I observe. And it just is different from other behavior that they do. And that's what I really like about that particular video. But the elephants, rather than, stay away from the elephant carcass, they explore the elephant carcass. So, but does it mean she knows what they're feeling? Not necessarily, right? Okay, so Debbie says, isn't empathy or empathetic behavior an observable behavior? Well, I would say we have to operationalize what your definition of empathy is, right? And so what we're saying is that these different researchers have defined it differently depending on their study, right? In ritualism and ritual behavior, I also heard another example of empathetic behavior in orcas. And maybe you can give us an example of what that is, Debbie, what you heard of as empathetic behavior. And so what we found in some of the studies is, so some of it might be response to pain or distress of another animal, might be how they operationalize it. But in these different studies, some animals responded and some didn't. So like we're saying in this example with the, quote, how the response to a carcass was and for the elephants. But again, we don't know if it's empathy. What the researchers was describing is that, that they just, spent more time around the carcass, whereas the vulture went away from it. Okay, the female orca in Northwest that was carrying the dead calf. So that's a really good question. So there was an observable behavior of carrying the dead calf around. So how do we operationalize that to bring us to an emotional state? Yeah. So how do we know what that means if if empathy is a construct, and how do we know what that means in terms of emotional response? That's pretty tough, isn't it? Yeah, that's where our challenge gets to. So I'm going to go down to here to is it empathetic? So that leads that's a great question. It leads well into this. So we use the word empathetic, which is a label, right? For maybe a behavior or a class of behavior. And so what does that mean? So let's say, for example, when we see an animal, quote, smile, is that empathetic? And so like when I'm smiling at you right now, do you smile back? When I laugh, do you laugh with me? Why do we have laugh tracks on TV shows? Is that creating empathy? What is your response to a baby crying, or to a baby parrot begging for food, or to if you hear a dog yelping? Do you respond or do you not respond? Is it empathy, or what's going on there? So I'm just going to ask, and again, I'm teasing this a little bit out to help you think a little bit more about this concept or this construct of empathy, to help us think a little bit more about how we might evaluate these things, because you may find that your response to a baby crying might be different than if you heard a baby parrot begging for food, or if you heard a dog yelping versus a dog maybe barking. Like last night, somebody left a dog out in the cold, and you could hear it barking in the night last night. And how do you respond to that? Yeah, research has shown there's more laughter generated when a laugh track is used, isn't there? Is that an empathetic response? Yeah. Why do we laugh more when there is a laugh track? Why do we laugh more? When you look at these pictures of these different animals, are they smiling? Are we smiling? There's some stuff to think about here. And then this one's kind of a sad one. I'm sorry, but it's just to get us to think again. I have to say, I'm more sensitive to a baby parrot than a human baby. Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that. This is to get you thinking about this stuff a little bit and to ask yourself why. The chip for certain isn't smiling. Smiles mean different things for different species. Yes. And I think on that horse, it's just about the angle of the shot, right? It looks like he's smiling. Dolphins look like they're smiling, but, and a smile means something to us, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing for a different species, right? Yeah. Dolphins don't really smile. Yeah. Right. So these are important things to be thinking about as we're getting into this a little bit more. And some of you may know this story about, Kitty Genovese in 1964, where people, and I know this is kind of a sad thing, but don't worry, we'll get into a warm fuzzy. And Debbie is saying it's not all about the nonverbal. About the 1964 Kitty Genovese murder, where people heard her screaming, but very few offered any help for 30 minutes. And so did that mean that all these people didn't have empathy for what might be going on? So what might be factors that contributed to little responding? So it would be sort of inappropriate to think that the mythology of the story was that 38 people heard what was going on and 38 people didn't respond, but that's not the accuracy of what was going on. Maybe empathy is part genetic, cultural, and experience. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere here now, aren't we? So why did few people call the police when something was going on with Kitty? Was it because they lacked empathy? So there's several factors that could have influenced what was going on. Yeah, so here's what were some things that were going on. So one, they think there was this, what they call now the bystander effect, that other people assumed that someone else took responsibility. No one was assigned with the task. Maybe someone else knows what, yeah, that's right. The myth that has been debunked. Yeah. That maybe someone else is taking care of it. Someone else knows better. Some people say there's a lack of connection to the victim, maybe dehumanizing Kitty, that habituation to violent crime. So, you just don't really pay attention to it. Social norms for the era, that men and women quarreling, that, you just, if a woman's in distress, maybe you just don't do anything, that, it's the man's right to kind of put his woman in place. The risk-benefit analysis for a person to get involved. Maybe I wouldn't be able to do anything about it, therefore I'm not going to get involved. And the truth of the matter is that some people did call, and that the police, but they didn't have a lot of information to offer, so the police weren't, sure that there was something that there was for them to address. So what does this start to tell us? This gives us some more information about, quote, empathy in this situation. So that was kind of a sad one, but now I'm going to give you a more positive one. And this was, some of you might be on Nextdoor. I'm on Nextdoor. And this post came up recently, that a man was standing in the cold, wrapped in plastic bags with a sign asking for help. A driver hopped out of his car, removed his jacket, and gave it to the cold man. Later on down the post, somebody posted, "That was my husband because I just read this post to him and he had no idea, and I had no idea that he did that. He thanks you all for his kind words." So now let's think about this. This is a nice story, right? Really nice, lovely story for the holidays. So what evoked this behavior? Was it empathy? So what do you think about when you look at that now and you think about, why did that guy do that? Why did that guy do that? And thank you guys for the compliment. Okay, so you think it was compassion. And I'm seeing I bring up great topics. Thank you. I thought this was kind of a good one for the holidays. So now let's look at this a little bit from your lens of behavior analysis. What is the difference? Well, let's get back to this guy. So what if this was, well, I don't want to lead you too much. I think there's some things here that make it I don't want to lead you too much. Was it his empathy that made him do this behavior? Our construct that made him do this behavior? Is helping those that belong to what you think of as your group? Let's put it this way. What if it was, because we're here in Austin, right? What if it was July and I don't know, the guy had I don't know, the guy was sitting in a lounge chair holding a beer. maybe it was a helping species survival kind of thing. There's the inverse of other people that think they don't belong to your group, like xenophobia. I think we can look at it a little smaller. The cost benefit for the guy in plastic and the guy helping is reinforced by those who praise his behavior. The person who was wrapped in plastic was not showing dangerous behavior. I think there's some things. Well, I think what's interesting is that although the guy did get reinforced later on Nextdoor, I don't think when he did the behavior, he was doing it for the reinforcer of the social reinforcers from Nextdoor. There could be social reinforcers that were there at the time, but I don't think the social reinforcers from the app were ones he was thinking about probably at the time. So you guys want to think about, your antecedents. So what are some of the antecedents here? Okay, so self-reinforcement. So there could be some automatic reinforcement here, right? So I think for the man, it might be automatically reinforcing to provide a coat for this guy, right? Right, seeing someone suffering is uncomfortable. I think that's a really good point, Rocky Roach. I think that's a really, really, really good point. I think it could be uncomfortable for him to see this person uncomfortable. Yes. There may be some program-specific consequences for giving the jacket to the man. Yes, absolutely. So by giving the guy the jacket, he could be escaping the discomfort of seeing somebody else uncomfortable. So giving the jacket to the man could be escaping that discomfort of seeing somebody uncomfortable. Absolutely. So that could be automatically reinforcing to him. Absolutely. There you go. You guys are on a good track there. And so what are some of those antecedents there that I think the only person who can tell us if it's empathy is the person who does it. Yes. Okay. And again, we have to we kind of have to operationalize that, but let's, we're breaking it down into smaller bits here. Right. And we kind of defined empathy a little bit earlier, but we're getting past that now into back to our behavior analysis here. Yeah, bingo. I like that, Rocky. Yeah. So we're getting back to our antecedents here. So what are some of the things here that have to be in place in order for this person to do this behavior? Right? So we've identified a possible reinforcer. It could be that this person thought it was really uncomfortable to see this person suffering. See this person being cold out there, and it made him feel, potentially it made the husband feel uncomfortable, and so he thought, yeah, okay, antecedents, how about not seeing the person suffering? Let's be more specific about than seeing the person suffering. I think we could just, the guy describes it. We see a guy standing in the cold, wrapped in plastic bags, asking for help. I think it's written there. That's what I saw. Yeah, that's what I see. A man standing in the cold, wrapped in plastic bags, asking for help. I don't know if the antecedents could be written out any better than that. So that to me were the antecedents, right? How is he covered in plastic? It's in the cold environment. Yeah, this is what the guy observed. A guy standing in the cold, wrapped in plastic bags with a sign asking for help. I think those are some pretty good antecedents, right? And the driver, and so to me, those were the antecedent conditions that the guy saw, right? And then giving up his coat, I think provided maybe an escape from an aversive condition that he saw there. Maybe he did not like seeing that visual stimulus and said, okay, I'm going to change what I see by providing that coat there, right? Now, later on, he gets the reinforcement on social media, but that wasn't his intention at the time, right? That wasn't something he was seeking. He didn't know that was going to happen. So that social media stuff was irrelevant. That was, something that happened later on. So, all right. So now keep that in mind. Now let's watch this video here. Okay. Doing good because feels good. Well, I don't know. I think he might have done it to escape something that felt unpleasant. The man was, but we don't know, the man was not being aversive in his behavior. I think it would matter how the man of the sign was also acting, doing. Yeah, it could be, right? So some people chose not to, right? Some people chose to drive by and not give the man a coat, correct? Not every single person engaged in a behavior there with that person, right? So I think this is one of the things that you have to think about in all these circumstances. So now I want you to watch this video and think about what we just talked about. And you're going to have to, there's some people, somebody put words over the top of it. So kind of, don't look at the words so much and think about antecedent conditions and what are the reinforcing consequences for the animals that participate. So, so now we have to do our deep thoughts again. Deep thoughts. So, yeah. So it goes, well, and again, we go back to like, we've got this situation, this antecedent condition. And again, I look at this response to pain or distress of another animal. So we've got a condition, and in this state, it's we've got, behavior of animals and how do we change that condition so that interesting as the videos, I found the text even more so designed to generate emotions. Yeah, the text was tough to ignore for sure. Yeah, so the text is tough to ignore for sure. But again, if you were to just look at the antecedent conditions, and to me, I look at it as an elephant going, I need to change my conditions here. How do I change my conditions so that I get the reinforcers I want? That's another way to look at it. Now, is there emotions going on there? Yeah, I think there's emotions going on there. We just don't really know what those emotions are. That's the tough part, because we're not allowed to know those things. Those are just covert behavior. But another way to think about it is like you would any behavior, is just that there are antecedent conditions and this animal is doing behavior to change the situation so that it can get the reinforcers it wants. And so some animal, and if you look at it, some animals are doing the behavior that changes it, and some animals are not. So does that mean some animals have empathy and some don't? Only that one, right? That wouldn't make, so that doesn't really make sense, right? So yeah, so that's another way to think about it. And you could apply that to a lot of things. So if you went back to why did you laugh with the laugh track? Why do you smile when someone smiles at you? Could there be social reinforcers there? Is there an aversive event that you're avoiding if you don't participate? Think about those studies that were done where everybody was told to choose the wrong answer, and the one guy was like, he knew the right answer, but he acquiesced and gave the wrong answer because of the social pressures. There's things like that going on too. Let's see, and their emotional definitions are not ours, or or at least we don't know. Strong emotions in the herd, watching ears, trunks. I bet they were calling, running back and forth. Nope, they all have it. It's just a matter of cost to the situation in the previous history and keeping the lion of pride away from the calf. What kind of reinforcement contingencies are there? Yeah, we don't, I don't know. Some of them could be negative reinforcement contingencies, some of them positive reinforcement. Yeah, so and there's lots of contingencies going on. It's not just one. Right. So there's lots of things going on there. So, yeah. So I think, with some of these things, there's, especially when we were talking about, the laugh tracks and the other person smiling, and some of our human things, there's social reinforcers that, there's pressures from the community, social reinforcers that we're thinking about. So those all play into some of our behavioral responses. And so it's really interesting. And that's why it's really hard to just say empathy as a big thing, this construct, this big blob at you. It's kind of similar to our talk about contra freeloading, to be quite honest. So that's why I think it's kind of fun to explore. And empathy is just registered in social species, more solitary, like most reptiles, not so much. Well, again, I think it's this problem with it being as a construct. I mean, I think you could certainly label other behaviors. It comes back to operationalizing behaviors and deciding whether it's, you want to call a class of responses as empathetic or not, to be quite honest. You probably could find something that a snake does as empathetic if you operationalized it and said, oh, yep. I mean, because there are snakes that, give live birth and have, lots of little babies around them, and maybe they do certain behaviors that you go, oh, that looks empathetic. So, you probably could find examples. We certainly have, like alligators that are maternal and things like that. So yeah, I think it comes back to that whole thing of going back to kind of like what we did with contra freeloading, is looking at it in terms of, what are the antecedents, what are the reinforcers, operationalizing your behavior. So that's kind of the fun exercise here, is what I was getting at. So kind of getting back to our recap here. that, we have to think of empathy as a construct. It has been defined as the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. And it is a term that has been attributed to some animals to suggest sort of these higher cognitive abilities. And that's why we have to be careful with words like that. We have to be there are challenges with this term empathy. We need to operationalize the term in order to measure it. And this presents its own difficulties. What behaviors do we measure? Some people have looked at things like yawning. How do animals respond when a conspecific is in distress or pain? How do they respond to a carcass? In my opinion, these behaviors also need to be further operationalized to properly be identified. So that's why the yawn one is a tough one for me, because not all yawns are the same as those of you who know animals know well. A yawn even the dog yawns. Like for me, my dog yawns when he's sort of excited to go for a walk, and I'm taking too long. He's kind of like, come on, I'm ready to go and you're taking too long. And that yawn is going to be different from a yawn of I'm just waking up. And so I'm not really keen on that whole yawn thing, to be quite honest. We also see, I have a little typo there. Other behaviors, what do I have here? We also see other behaviors when there's a change in context, the target behavior may change. Okay. So therefore, empathy, as I have in quotations, may or may not be observed depending on the circumstances. Therefore, how can we say a species or even an individual is empathetic? We can't label them empathetic. So that would be a label for a class of behaviors we define that are emitted under certain conditions. And so this kind of goes back again to our whole antecedent thing. Oops. Oh, no, did I not? Oh, you know what? Let me grab my image really quick. I didn't add it. I'm going to do it right now. Recap 2. Looks like I didn't add my image, but I will right now. Okay, there we go. This also means that when you see the behaviors you have operationalized as empathetic, you will want to look for the contingencies that maintain them. Are reinforcers gained? Are aversives avoided? Does this mean animals do not feel the same thing as the other animal or person under certain conditions? Not necessarily. We just don't know, since that's covert behavior. So our discussion is just a reminder to think critically when you're reviewing broad statements about behavior. And we see, empathy is one of those things that gets looked at from different fields, different, like cognition or ethology. So we have to, consider that when you're reading those studies, you're going to want to be a critical thinker when you're reading those studies, and they're going to provide different insights into the topic. So when you see somebody saying, oh, well, there's empathy because I saw this, put your little behavior analytic cap on and say, oh, but, empathy is a construct, and what are the antecedents and what are the reinforcers? Maybe not only, an animal's not going to emit that behavior under these conditions, and because, the reinforcer's not there or the antecedent conditions weren't there. So we can't use the broad term, the animal is empathetic. It's, it's going to only happen under these conditions. So it's again, just, kind of like contra freeloading. It's just another, behavior that we need to operationalize, and it might be emitted under certain conditions, depending on the antecedent conditions and the reinforcers that maintain it. Right? There you go. And Debbie says she was bummed she missed the contra freeloading discussion. Well, it is still out there and available, so you can go back and watch it. All right. So what is new and interesting? I'm really excited. A whole slew of us are going to be presenting at the Association of Behavior Analysis International in Boston, Massachusetts, May 28th through 30th. We're going to be doing a whole series of symposia on the constructional approach, working with both humans and animals, and I get to do one on animals, so I'm super excited about that. And that is the abstract. It's too much to read, but it's not posted on their website yet. But those of you that are in that area who may want to come join us, come on down. And also just a reminder that Goats is back. Our first presentation is January 10th. Annette Peterson from the Copenhagen Zoo is going to be our first presenter. If you are a member of animaltrainingfundamentals.com, you get to attend for free. If you're not a member, you can still join us and just go to atfgoats.com to join. And if you do register for that live event, whether you're a member or not a member, Stony from Animal Equipment by Stony has donated a bunch of cool training supplies, and we will draw a winner who attends the live event to win one of those cool training supplies. And I'll do that until I run out of supplies. So we'll keep doing that, each event, one at each event. And what else? And just a reminder that if you're looking for a last minute gift, you can gift a membership to animaltrainingfundamentals.com. Just send me an email and I will set that up for you. And if you're not a member, you can still become a member. We're still offering that super cool discount. So there is the code to do that. And with that, I think I will wrap it up and say that I'm super glad you were able to join me, right before the holidays. I know it's a tough time for a lot of people. It's super busy and, people are running around trying to get things done, but I do appreciate y'all getting in here and spending some time with me for a little chat about empathy. It's a interesting topic and kind of a tough one to talk about because it is a construct and, how do we get down to the meat and bones of it all? But hopefully we did. And my dog has a few little barks to add to it at the end there. All right, guys. Well, we did pretty good. 12:01, not too bad. Thank you for spending time with us. Well, thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate that. So I guess it's time to go in. And Chris says, we appreciate you. Happy holidays to all. And I agree. I sent it right back to all of you. And I look forward to catching. And thank you all for a really interesting session. I hope everyone has an awesome Christmas from Adrian. And I agree with you all. And I look forward to catching up with you all after the holidays. I am here next Monday. And I'll have to check the calendar for what happens after that. I am back on the road again in January a little bit, but should be here next week. I got to put my thinking cap on and figure out a topic for next week. All right, guys. Appreciate you all as always, and I hope you have a great holiday, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye, everybody.